A misconfigured S3 bucket. Customer records. Publicly accessible for 6 months. The security team's postmortem finds 3 failures. The data was never classified, so nobody knew how sensitive it was or how to protect it. It was never labeled, so nobody knew what it contained, and no retention policy existed, so nobody knew it should have been deleted 2 years ago. Domain 2 teaches you how to prevent all 3. This is Domain 2 of the CISSP Domain Mastery Series, Asset Security. We map to objectives 2.1 through 2.6. Today, data classification, ownership roles, handling requirements, the data lifecycle, retention and end of life, sanitization methods, data security controls, and scoping and tailoring. Every concept in this video is exam tested. Data classification is the foundation of asset security. You cannot protect what you have not categorized. There are 2 classification systems the exam tests. The government or military system has 4 levels. Top secret, unauthorized disclosure could cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Secret, serious damage. Confidential, damage. Unclassified, no expected damage from disclosure. The commercial system also has 4 common levels. Confidential was also called proprietary, highest sensitivity. Trade secrets, strategic plans, unreleased financials. Private, sensitive personal information, HR records, medical data. Sensitive requires care but less restriction than private. Public, intended for general release. 2 principles that apply to both systems. First, the data owner determines the classification, not IT, not security. The owner is the business role accountable for the data. Second, data should be classified at its highest sensitivity level. If a document contains one top secret element, the entire document is top secret. Classification is not permanent. Data can be reclassified or declassified as its value or sensitivity changes over time. Data ownership is one of the most frequently tested role distinctions in Domain 2. The exam will present a scenario and ask which role is responsible for a given action. The data owner is a business role, typically a manager, director, or executive. The owner is accountable for the data and is responsible for classifying it, approving access requests, and ensuring appropriate controls are applied. The CFO owns financial data. The CHRO owns HR records. The data custodian is a technical role. IT or operations. The custodian implements and maintains the controls the owner specifies. They back it up, encrypt it, patch the systems that store it. Owner decides. Custodian implements. This distinction is non-negotiable on the exam. The data steward manages data quality and ensures data governance policies are followed. The steward ensures the data is accurate, consistent, and compliant with standards. This role appears more frequently in enterprise data governance contexts. Under GDPR, which the CISSP now references, 2 additional roles matter. The data controller determines the purposes and means of processing personal data. The data processor processes personal data on behalf of the controller. If your organization uses a cloud provider to process customer data, your organization is the controller and the provider is the processor. Once data is classified, it must be handled according to its classification level. Handling requirements cover 4 areas: labeling, human-readable identification of the classification on documents, files, and media. Every asset should be labeled so anyone who encounters it knows immediately how to handle it. Unmarked data is often treated as public by default, which is a significant risk. Marking, physical or digital indicators applied to assets. Digital files may have classification metadata embedded. Physical documents have headers and footers. Storage media has visible labels. Storage requirements, higher classification requires stricter physical and logical controls. Top secret data may require separate air-gapped systems, locked facilities, and 2-person integrity for access. Public data may have minimal storage restriction. Transmission requirements, data in transit must be protected commensurate with its classification. Confidential data requires encryption over any public or untrusted network. The need-to-know principle governs access. Even individuals with the appropriate clearance level may not access data unless they have a specific need to know it for their role. Clearance is necessary but not sufficient. Need to know is also required. All data passes through a life cycle. Security controls must be applied at every stage. The exam tests whether you can identify which controls apply at which phase. Create or collect. Classification is assigned at the point of creation. This is when the data owner's role is most critical. Store data at rest must be protected with appropriate access controls, encryption, and backup procedures based on its classification. User process data being actively used must be monitored. Data loss prevention tools and logging apply here. Share or distribute, need to know governs who receives data. Transmission controls, encryption secure channels with supply. Data shared with third parties creates controller-processor relationships. Archive. Data that is no longer actively used but must be retained. Retention schedules and legal hold processes apply. Archive data must remain protected. Classification does not change with archival. Destroy or dispose. Data that has reached the end of its retention period must be sanitized in a manner appropriate to its classification. The method of destruction must be documented. Key exam point. Classification must be maintained throughout the entire life cycle. Data does not become less sensitive simply because it is old or archived. Retention policies define how long data must be kept before it can be destroyed. They are driven by legal requirements, regulatory mandates, and business needs. The exam tests the distinction between minimum and maximum retention. Some regulations require you to keep data for a minimum period. Others require you to delete it after a maximum period. GDPR's data minimization principle. A legal hold, also called a litigation hold, overrides the normal retention schedule. When litigation is anticipated, all potentially relevant data must be preserved regardless of its scheduled destruction date. Destroying data under a legal hold is spoliation, destruction of evidence. The legal and financial consequences are severe. Hardware and software also have life cycles. End of life, REOL, is when a vendor stops selling or actively developing a product. End of support. EOS is when a vendor stops providing patches, updates, and technical support. EOS is the critical security threshold. A system past end of support will not receive security patches. Any new vulnerabilities discovered after EOS are permanently unmitigated unless the system is replaced or custom support is contracted. Running EOS systems in production is an accepted risk that must be documented. When data must be destroyed, the destruction method must match the classification level. The concept underlying all sanitization decisions is data remanence, or the residual representation of data that remains after deletion attempts. Deleting a file does not delete the data. It deletes the pointer to the data. The actual data remains on the media until it is overwritten. 3 sanitization methods in increasing order of thoroughness. Clearing, overwriting the media with non-sensitive data, suitable for media that will be reused within the same organization at the same or lower classification level. Not sufficient for media leaving the organization. Purging, more thorough removal, includes degaussing, exposing magnetic media to a powerful magnetic field to randomize its contents, or cryptographic erasure where the encryption key is destroyed. Suitable for media being released outside the organization. Destruction, physical destruction of the media itself. Shredding, incineration, pulverizing, disintegration, provides the highest assurance of data elimination. Required for the highest classification levels. Exam tip, match the method to the scenario. Reuse within the org. Clearing, leaving the org, purging. Highly classified must ensure no recovery of destruction. Data security controls protect information from unauthorized access, disclosure, modification, and destruction. The exam tests 4 primary technical controls in Domain 2. Encryption protects data confidentiality at rest and in transit. Classification level determines encryption requirements. Confidential data traversing a public network requires encryption. Full disk encryption protects data at rest on devices. Data loss prevention. DLP monitors data in use, in motion, and at rest for policy violations and prevents unauthorized exfiltration. DLP can block email attachments containing classified data, prevent uploads to unauthorized cloud services, or alert on USB transfers. Digital Rights Management, DRM, also called Information Rights Management or IRM, controls what recipients can do with data after they receive it, prevents unauthorized copying, forwarding, printing, or screen capture. DLP controls whether data leaves. DRM controls what happens to it after it does. Tokenization replaces sensitive data with a non-sensitive substitute, the token, that has no exploitable value, used extensively in payment card processing. The actual data is stored in a secure token vault. Data masking obscures real data with fictitious but realistic data for use in non-production environments. Developers test against masked data, never against production records. The final Domain 2 concept is scoping and tailoring, how organizations customize standard control sets to fit their specific environment. A baseline is the minimum set of security controls required for a given classification level or system type. NIST 853 provides control baselines organized by impact level, low, moderate, and high. An organization starts with the appropriate baseline and then customizes it. Scoping is the process of identifying which baseline controls apply to a particular system or environment and removing those that do not. If a control addresses physical media but the system is fully cloud-based, physical media controls may be scoped out. Tailoring is the process of modifying the remaining controls to fit the organization's specific mission, environment, and risk tolerance. A control may be tailored to implement additional parameters or constraints. Compensating controls are alternative controls used when a required control cannot be implemented as specified. They must provide equivalent protection to the original control. They must be documented and approved by the appropriate authority. A compensating control does not remove the requirement. It satisfies the requirement through an alternative means. Question 1. An organization's legal team notifies IT that litigation is anticipated involving customer transaction records. The records are scheduled for deletion next week under the standard retention policy. What should IT do? Answer. Issue a legal hold immediately. The scheduled deletion must be suspended. Destroying data under a legal hold is spoliation, destruction of evidence, with severe legal consequences. Question 2. A database administrator is directed to prepare a storage array for transfer to a third-party vendor. The array contains confidential customer data. Which sanitization method is appropriate? Answer. Purging. Media leaving the organization requires purging. Degaussing or cryptographic erasure. Clearing is only appropriate for reuse within the same organization. Destruction would prevent the hardware transfer. Question 3. A security tool prevents users from forwarding internal documents marked confidential as email attachments regardless of recipient. What type of control is this? Answer. DLP. Data loss prevention. DLP prevents unauthorized exfiltration of data in motion. DRM would control what the recipient could do with the document after receiving it. These two are commonly confused on the exam. 4 flashcards. 1. Data owner classifies data and approves access. Custodian implements controls. Controller determines processing purpose. Processor processes on behalf. 2. Government levels. Top secret, secret, confidential, unclassified, commercial, confidential/proprietary, private, sensitive, public. 3. Sanitization. Clearing for internal reuse, purging for media leaving the org, destruction for highest classification. 4. DLP prevents data from leaving. DRM controls what happens after it leaves. That is Domain 2. Next episode, Domain 3, Security Architecture and Engineering. Security models, cryptography, and secure design principles. Test yourself right now at zerodaylabs.tech. Adaptive practice exams that surface your gaps before the real exam does. Subscribe and we will see you in Domain 3. Before you go, if this series is building your CISSP foundation, think like a CISSP will take you the rest of the way. It teaches the senior security mindset that decides the borderline question, the ones that separate candidates who pass from experienced engineers who fail. $25 at zerodaylabs.tech. Link is in the description.